Ready?
Engage.
Ooh. We could start by hello. Subspace 24. That means
Well,
two years of doing a We Were Gamers subspace transmission pod once a month. It doesn't feel
man,
like that.
it does not feel like that. I'm shocked that we've been doing this that long somehow.
I I can believe it, but I also enjoyed it so much that I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Oh boy, normally this pod would be Discovery Season 2 short treks. But I
Yeah.
think
I
there
think we're
are short treks for season 2.
okay. I should watch those. Season 3 is coming up soon.
Season 3 has officially started as of yesterday. Last night was the first episode of Discovery Season 3. So we're going to have to figure that out.
Oh man, I didn't realize it started like last night. I thought it was
Yep.
coming later this week or something, but I guess
No.
okay.
They
Wow,
they
great.
ended Lower Decks last week and Discovery this week, and when Discovery ends, I'm sure we'll get something else because like we said the other day when we were talking about streaming services, I think that maybe this is just a Star Trek service from now on.
Yeah.
They're going to make sure they have Star Trek going every single week so that you stay subscribed every single month.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Not wrong.
It's okay. I mean, what is it? If you pay $5.99 to have ads or something like that.
I don't even know anymore.
I don't even know
gonna
anymore
attempt to
either.
know.
But let's say it's $10. $10
Yeah.
times 12. I call it a donation to good writing. Hopefully that means we get a lot of Star Trek in our lives.
Well, I hope that it's good writing.
Yeah,
Is
you
what I
hope,
hope.
right? No, they're not all going to
Yeah.
be winners.
No, it would be nice though. And I think, I think thus far we have gotten relatively lucky in that a lot of them are pretty good.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
Discovery has branched out to be very unique of an experience for a lot of people, and there's a lot of memes on the internet about Discovery is also Star Trek, that kind of stuff. Because
yeah,
I think there's a band of people that might not accept it as easily, or think it's just so disconnected from what we've had going on. And it's a unique experience. It's very action oriented.
yeah.
The
For good
whole
and for bad, on that front, for sure.
It's tough to say that season 2 wasn't a huge setup to bring back the Enterprise and Spock.
Right. Yeah.
When it ends on literally an ad for, hey, Strange New Worlds is coming.
Yeah.
Um, it's an odd experience, but I think on the whole, it's been enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have other Trek to talk about. I think we should talk about Picard for a minute first.
Okay. Let's do it, man.
I think I have mentioned on here, and I mentioned to you a couple times, that I have read a book. One book has been read in my life.
Wow. Literature exists. We're
Yeah.
acknowledging it for the first time on this podcast here today.
Well, there's a whole universe of Star Trek books, and they used to be extremely popular. I have some on the shelf behind me that, like, William Shatner used to write fiction books about Captain Kirk.
I read some of these books when I was in like middle school and junior high.
It definitely feels like there was a heyday of Star Trek and Star Wars books somewhere in that age for us.
Mm-hmm.
I know Star Wars books are back. You don't have to email. They're doing a good job of publishing those. Star Trek books, they have a good lineup coming. There's like
Oh, that's interesting.
there's like a slowly been a developing series of Discovery books.
Hmm.
I have a second one written by a guy that I like, John Jackson Miller, who's a comic book artist and a sci-fi, not artist, writer, comic book writer and a sci-fi writer. Author.
Okay.
Correct, yeah. Which a lot of the Discovery ones seem like that you don't have to read them in order or anything. They're just sort of side stories. And the John Jackson Miller one is called The Enterprise War, which is what was the Enterprise doing during the Klingon War? And I was like, well, that's hardly a Discovery book, but I guess it is technically. So I grabbed that one all as well.
Look, man, I'll take that over like 7-part series in which you must read everything in order, and also like is the 5th, 6th, and 7th book ever going to come out?
Yeah. Yeah. But the one I've been alluding to is called Star Trek Picard, The Last Best Hope.
Okay.
What would you guess on the title that book is about?
So the fact that it's called Star Trek Picard and not like Star Trek The Next Generation or something makes me assume that it is based in the like Picard part of the timeline.
Correct.
Such as like the show.
Mm-hmm.
And either this is some sort of novelization of the series or some kind of side story happening in or around the time of the show Picard.
What if it was just everything you had questions about at the beginning of that show?
This is literally the backstory that they didn't show or tell ever.
Yep.
Pretty garbage, dude. Not really excited to hear this.
I wonder if this is Michael Chabon, who wrote most of Picard. He did not write this book, which is odd considering he is a very well-regarded novelist. I believe he has a Pulitzer Prize.
All right, well, I was just about to say, is this just the screenwriter doing a thing and being like, look, man, here's the script I couldn't write or they wouldn't let me write, right?
I don't know. It seems like his cliff notes for the backstory of a show that he didn't want to write. So, like, it seems like to me, I don't know that this is true. Okay?
Okay.
I don't know that this is true. But it seems like to me, a good writer would have figured all the stuff out about what happened before the show started.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because this is like background stuff like this is important in order to have characters that can grow, because you need to know where they were to know where they're going.
And what happened to them to know why they are the way they are and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that they act consistently, etc.
Right.
They don't appear to have had any interest in ever starting the show before where they started it, right? They wanted to bring in Picard in a broken state. They wanted to bring in the story at the point that it was at so they could start where they wanted to start.
Right.
This seems like he wrote down all his notes about what happened to everybody and how it happened and why it happened. Except for the whole Romulan subplot, really. There's no inclination that spoilers for all of Picard starting now.
Yes,
the explosions on Mars were caused by anything. Like they never figure that out in the book. That's basically the end of the book.
Which, I mean, I guess fair, because that is the story of Picard,
right,
and like the show, and they
don't let you in on that. There's no sub chapters for the Romulans or anything in here.
Okay,
it's all roughly Picard's perspective. There's some other characters that they walk through and stuff like that, but just as a top level thing, and we'll talk about the book for like 5 more minutes or whatever, but like just as a top level thing, this seems like a lot of that. Like, okay, he's on the Enterprise to start this book. How does he get from the Enterprise to Broken Man on his estate? Literally, that entire run is in this book.
So like, it must cover a sizable amount of time
A
then.
huge amount of time. There's a lot of time jumping because a lot of it is, well, then they warped there for a year and then they warped there for, like there's a huge
Is it
quadrant
real?
they got to do work on.
Crazy.
Yeah. Um, I mean, the book covers Picard a lot. Also, Rafi, totally, totally different character in this book than in the show. She is done so much more service by being in this book than just being introduced as that loser in the show, right?
Yeah.
Like she's an upstanding, extremely smart, and a little bit crazy because she's, overthinks everything. Starfleet officer in this.
Right.
And it's like, I think
I
super important to have seen her this way.
I really was unhappy with Rafi in the show.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, we talked about it on this very podcast. We did not like her character until
right.
maybe the very end, and
Right.
even then, questionable. Right?
Questionable. Absolutely questionable. I don't know that I still like her character in that capacity. But in the book, she's quite charming, even in terms of her personality. The way she handles Romulans, the way she is his right hand man, right hand XO,
Mm-hmm.
That woman that he talks to at the beginning of the show and asks for help, the one that's like the hubris of you, the Starfleet woman,
The
the
admiral or
admiral, yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
she's in this book. Clancy, her name's Clancy, and she's like a captain at the time, and you can like watch her build her way to being the next. She's the commander in chief of Starfleet at the
Mm-hmm.
time of the show, but she's not at the time of this book. So you watch her build her way up. There's a lot of characters that I don't understand why they disappeared from the book and weren't in the show. And then there's the big indicator to me that this was done before the show is that there are characters missing from here that you would absolutely have expected them to be in the book. Like there's a cutout that ends up probably being one of the two Romulans that lives with Picard.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Romulan that becomes very close with Picard, living on his starship as a like attaché, I think is the right word.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
a
That is the
Romulan.
word.
He's Tal Shiar. He like saves Picard's
Okay.
life. He watches Picard try to save Romulans and becomes like very much attached. Like you'd think that would be the character or characters that those two end up being, but they're not in this. And I know people can email if they want to, podcast@wewergamers.com. I know there is a comic book that introduces those two characters. But that comic book came after the show started.
Mm-hmm.
So this book is kind of like, it very much indicates to me that this was written before they had the whole show figured out.
Or at least
The notes were handed off beforehand and they started
before
writing the book.
before they started filming anyway. At which point they changed stuff, and then the book diverged.
Totally
Right?
possible, yeah. There's a lot of annoying comments in here about like what future Picard thinks about past Picard, like asides and stuff like that, which I didn't really like, which might have been them trying to tie it to the show better.
Yeah. I wonder. There's a lot of I don't know. Like, do you think that is that really literally like future Picard talking to himself about past Picard?
Yes.
Or, what a weird device for
It
a
happens
book.
like a couple times in the book. Just a few times, but it's a very strange. Like that's why I'm saying I don't like it. It's very strange.
And there's no like meta device or anything
No,
used.
there's no other meta device of like connecting this to the future. It's just like these random asides about like future Picard thinking of old Picard, and you're like, why are you doing this? Like, it seems very much so that it's another indicator that they had to get things to tie a little better. But I want to cover a few tiny things that I think you'll find funny. So when Picard finally decides that he's going to take on this Romulan mission, there's a few things that I wonder how they're going to fit now that they're canon to other stories that have come before, like in Voyager and TNG and stuff like that.
Okay.
So the Enterprise goes to Worf.
The planet or
The Enterprise is now Worf's ship after he leaves. Worf is promoted to
after
captain.
Picard leaves, Worf is
Picard, yeah.
promoted to captain. Yeah,
Worf is
okay.
promoted to captain because I think, as we found out in Lower Decks, Riker has already left for the Titan.
Right. Is it confusing then because the last anyone saw of Worf, or the last time I paid attention to Worf, I guess, to be
He was
fair,
on
I'm sure
DS9.
he was on DS9
Right.
and was not captain of the Defiant. He was still commander there?
Yes,
Or was
so
he captain of the Defiant at the end?
he was commander at the end of that, I believe. I don't think he got promoted to captain.
Okay.
So this does mention that he had come back from DS9 to XO the Enterprise when Riker left.
I see.
Yeah. But everyone thought he'd get passed over because he's a Klingon and the Enterprise is the flagship of the fleet and all that. But there's a really good piece of writing in there that's like, look, we promoted a Klingon to be flagship of the fleet, and there's a whole bunch of politics in this book, a lot of politics in this book that I really should, I mean, I'll wrap it up at the end, but like, you know, they use him as an example of, hey, we got to help the Romulans. Look, the Klingons used to be our bitter enemies, and now Worf's in charge of our flagship. Like, everybody chill. So like Picard calls everyone at a certain point to try and get advice, and LaForge, this is a big thing that I don't understand how they don't mention in the show. LaForge leaves the Enterprise to go be the commander of the Mars shipyards.
So wait, LaForge was there?
So LaForge, LaForge was not there during the explosions. You know, miraculously in quotes, right? Obviously.
I see.
Because he was headed to Earth to talk to Maddox. The book also has a huge backstory about Bruce Maddox.
Which, I mean, you need anyway, right? Because you don't really know who he is in Picard. They don't do a good job of explaining him. We found he was from one episode of The Next Generation or whatever.
Yeah, I literally put in my notes here, hey, they explain in the book that he's the guy that tried to take apart Data in TNG.
Yeah, it really would have helped them to like have done the first few, maybe just the first or second episode of Picard, have done quick like flashes of old scenes from TNG and been like, circle a guy.
Well, what's funny about it is that LaForge, as the creator of he works on Mars, right? And he has to create with Maddox and this other person the synthetics. Like, the synthetics don't exist before this book. They're created in this book. And LaForge has to work with Maddox, and they hate each other, partially because LaForge remembers what he did to Data, right? Like, there's this whole struggle that Picard somehow never struggles with once when they have to go find Bruce Maddox. He never is like, why do we have to find Bruce Maddox? That guy sucks. Which he really does, by the way. This book proves it. But there's a whole backstory about him and his, I can't remember the name of his girlfriend, that is in the show. Yes. Yeah. There's all that backstory is in here too. I really wish this had been the first season of Picard and there had been a time jump. Because this book reads like TNG.
Yeah.
Very heavily. And I think the author used to write. I can't remember her name, and I should shout her out. So I'll look her up. But the book reads like vintage Picard, which it should, right? Because it's before he has all the problems. Una McCormick is her name, and she wrote a bunch of TNG books.
Okay.
Interesting. So it has that style. It has that voice.
And that's probably why the space politics are so front and center, as there was a lot of space politics in TNG.
Right. It's absolutely space politics. So, yeah, there you go.
Interesting.
Star Trek Picard, The Last Best Hope. I think it's a B+ book. It's not like burning the doors down on being amazing. But given what the source material likely was, dry-ish. You know.
I've been rereading a bunch of like straight fantasy
Mm-hmm.
novels, and some of them are certainly not the level of B plus. So
Yeah, it's somewhere in the B range, let's say.
okay, okay. I'm some of that stuff you said seems like it's kind of shocking to me that they wouldn't have gone and mentioned it. Stuff like
Oh man,
Geordi having helped create the synthetics.
and being on Mars, and then like being the commander of Mars.
I mean, like, here's the question, right? Like, why would Geordi allow himself to create a race of almost the level of indentured servants? Because that's kind of how they use the synthetics, right? If the synthetics are like fully aware and capable,
They're not fully aware. They make a huge point about that in the book. They are literally just dead like machines. The reason they have those bodies is because of the technical work they needed them to do. A lot of
I see.
they put a they the book explains that there's a lot of parts on a starship that are handmade. Like they mention a couple
I
parts,
see.
and they're like, these
You
parts have to
need
be assembled by hand, and we can't make 10,000 rescue ships for the Romulans unless we have more hands, and we can't train human hands to do it in less than 10 years. You know, you have to go through training to do this, so we could program
right
hands, and that's literally what they are. Like, they're programmed hands.
so that they can get into the weird spaces and
Right,
assemble the
right. And so
EPS
that's,
conduit or whatever.
you know, everyone's in shock because they're like, well, they can't do this. They don't have the programming to do this. How did this happen? So that's the kind of end of the book.
Again, something that might have been good to explain
Right.
to the
So
people watching your show.
look, if you were really into Picard, if people listening, if were they were really into Picard, you should read this book. There's no reason you shouldn't read this book. If you kind of thought like, I'm good with what Picard gave me, but I'm not like super into the universe or whatever, you could skip it. Like, they gave you enough in the show, but like this really opened a lot of like, huh, I wonder why that wasn't like a thing that they wanted to mention in the show, which is kind of problematic and also enlightening. Like, it makes me like the universe better of Picard, but that's not it's not helpful to the show, right? You know, like,
Right. But like it's not helpful to the show, but also it helps you get grounded in that world that the show is treading in.
yeah,
And so it less feels like a bunch of stuff coming at you out of right field if they explain a little bit of where that stuff came from.
right.
And doubly so if you tie it back to characters that people know and I assume
Oh
like
yeah.
Geordi, and go
Well,
like,
it's, I
hey,
mean,
Geordi
Spock.
left the Enterprise and he went over here and made this stuff. And then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean, Spock's in the book. Like, a lot of stuff happens in this book that you would expect. Well, because remember, Spock goes to the
he was an
Romulan
ambassador.
home. He's the ambassador to Romulus, and
Right.
In those Kelvin timelines, he's the one that tried to save the star and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So he had to be involved, and so like you get all that stuff in here too.
How long is it in terms of like,
Oh, not very long. Not very
a
long.
few hundred pages?
Yeah, a couple
or-
hundred pages.
Okay.
It wasn't. It was an easy read. There's nothing crazy about it.
I'm just curious.
So that's recommended if you want more Picard or want Picard to make a little more sense. If you want to spend that amount of time. All right. That's enough on that book, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
We have also to cover because Star Trek's coming at us fast. Since we talked last, literally an entire season of a Star Trek show has happened.
Yeah, man.
How crazy is that? 10 episodes of a show called Star Trek Lower Decks.
Well, we must have.
We overlapped a little bit, right?
Yeah, it definitely had been going when we recorded the last Discovery episode.
So we got
But yeah,
Titmouse and Mike McMahon.
Nick
Mike McMahon.
Mike McMahon.
Yeah. Who just along like Titmouse worked on Rick and Morty.
I was about to make a comment that I could tell.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So if you know what Rick and Morty is, if you don't know what Rick and Morty is, maybe you go look it up. This style of show is very much that style of show in a less ridiculous and offensive main way.
I mean, that some of that comes down to the fact that, hey,
It's Star Trek.
yeah, it well, and you know, the writing and the people behind it, right? Like, there's no Justin Roiland involved in this. There's
Sure.
no, you know, shoot, the other one of the other Rick and Morty creators whose name I forgot. Anyway, like they're not trying to do Rick and Morty here,
Thankfully.
but yes, and but as I will talk about when in the first episode, you know, so like I was not sold coming into this show.
I wasn't either.
Like I was like, oh, they're doing an animated thing. It's going to be about like underdecks people. Like, I don't know. Like, okay. I mean, the idea is okay, but I don't know. Like, I saw the animation and it looked kind of a lot like Rick and Morty.
It's Titmouse. All of it looks like that. There's no, you know.
I was like, are they trying to do like a Star Trek Rick and Morty here? Or are they trying to do some kind of like bad Adventure Time knockoff or something?
If you do, you know, if you watch Shonen Jump, you know what that show's gonna look like. If you watch Titmouse, you know what that show's gonna look like.
Yeah, and so I was like, dude, I don't know about this. And I watched the first one, and I wasn't all the way sold on it at the end of the first one. I was like, okay.
The first one didn't turn me off. Okay, the first one, there's going to be minor spoilers because I'm going to recap them real quick. Okay. We meet Tendi as she arrives on the Cerritos. You meet Boimler and Mariner, who show her around the ship. They go to a planet. Boimler gets attacked by what they discover to be a farm animal. The farm animal has unknowingly the antidote to a virus that Ransom, played by Jerry O'Connell, by the way, who's awesome, has brought back to the ship and has infected the whole crew and turned them into like puke spewing zombies. They use the slime from Boimler to rescue the entire ship. The end.
Yes.
That's the kind of show you're in for most of the time, right?
Yeah.
Like hijinks and ridiculous one-liners while some sort of crazy plot happens that is not that expansive.
It is the show also has like it is nice that the show is pretty close to disconnected from each other, right? Like you can.
It is yes. So it is one of those types of episodic shows without a huge overarching plot every episode, but it is more like TNG in a lot of ways of we're going to follow roughly the same set of people and you're going to get to know them. But unlike Discovery, I knew all of these characters' names by the end of the first episode. Almost all of them. Like I still forget the security chief's name. But Shax, there we go.
What a good name. I don't remember his last name.
It doesn't matter. Shax is just called Shax, yeah.
Yes.
But like you know everybody's name, you know what they're doing, you know who you get it by the end of the first episode. And it's hard to parse for me because it's 30 minutes long. And by the end of season 2 of Discovery, I still can't tell you the other bridge officer's name other than OO.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. The thing that this show does, right, that the other shows don't do, or that Discovery does a bad job of. Discovery does a bad job of person saying other person's name.
Right.
They don't do like, hey, OO, here is the thing I'm going to tell you.
Right, of course.
In this show, there's a lot of, hey, Boimler, will you do this for me? And then Boimler turns around and says, no, I don't want to because I'm a scaredy cat guy.
Yeah.
And then that's the whole thing. Like, you're like, oh, this is Boimler. And that's Mariner because she's out there teasing him. And like, there you go. I've learned everyone now.
Yeah. Great job, I think. But yeah, I think end of first episode, I was like, well, they tried not to rock the boat here or do anything crazy. They just had a silly story and introduced you to some characters, so I'm not going to make a judgment.
Yeah, I was not against the show after watching the first one. I still wasn't sold, and Mariner's character kind of, I felt the rickening
Oh yeah, it was a little
of
grating at
her,
first, wasn't it?
and I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
this is like the female Rick character they wrote that I'm not gonna enjoy here. Not sure about this. And like, look, Rick and Morty is a fine show. I've seen many episodes of it. I don't know if all of it, but you really gotta want to watch Rick and Morty to watch Rick and Morty, man. It is its own thing, and Star Trek is not that thing for me. So I wasn't in, but like I wasn't out. I wasn't against it. I was like, okay, I need to see where this goes.
I think we had equal fears.
Yeah. And like, especially when they, like, the trailers and stuff they showed were just like, oh man, what is this?
So you get to episode 2, and Boimler and Mariner have to take General Korin, the Klingon, down to a planet. It doesn't matter what planet it is.
None of the planets matter.
Mariner, you find out, is Korin's old friend. And you start to get backstory here finally on some of the characters, right? She drinks and fights and all sorts of stuff. And Boimler's like, how have you had time to do any of this? You know, become friends with the Klingon, all that sort of stuff. We're the same age. But you kind of get the idea as they lose Korin because he's drunk and he steals their shuttle.
Goes off to do Klingon stuff.
Goes off to, they have to follow him around town. Boimler discovers that he has no experience outside the ship, basically. And they get lost in a town, and Mariner keeps saving his butt all the time. And then, to make him feel better, stages an incident with a Ferengi, which is pretty funny.
It was very funny.
Come this way, human.
Yes. This guy seems very trustworthy. I don't know why.
Yeah. Mariner's like,
you're trying to use stereotypes.
Let's go with it. Yeah, don't stereotype him, man. Let's go this way. And he's like, what's your landing code? Hiss. At the same point, Rutherford, we get Rutherford, the engineer, to finally take us around the ship.
Yes.
Like, the whole point of Rutherford's little, he wants to spend more time with Tendi, so he's like going to go through the divisions because he might change from engineering, where he seems to love to be.
Right.
Spoiler, he stays in engineering, but they go around the ship finally, and you get to meet all of the people in charge of the different sections of the ship. So you meet Shax, you meet Ransom, you meet, bunch of people. I can't remember.
Yeah. And the ship they're on, the Cerritos, is captained by, what's her name? It doesn't matter. The show's not about her. The captain,
Carol Freeman.
Carol Freeman, thank you. It's clear this is like the second class starship,
Oh no, they say it at the beginning. The first episode is about how they do second contact.
Right. It's a funny, like, oh look, haha, remember First Contact? Well, this is like
the B team gets the backup with the paperwork, right? Like,
yeah, they go and they do all the paperwork. They have them sign the documents. They're bringing supplies and stuff like that. And so like it's very clear that like these are the, like, not misfits. That's the wrong word, but this whole ship is like not, it's not the. It's not the ship of the line. It's not the top grade anything. Yeah. Everyone here is kind of like the screw-ups of people that couldn't make it elsewhere.
Did you also catch that they are California class ships?
No, I did not. Oh, that's so good.
They're California class ships, and every single one of them is named after a city in California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting that Cerritos would merit getting named.
I don't know.
It's a lot of cities.
There was a lot of other ones.
I just mean there's a lot of cities.
I can't. What was the one that was destroyed in 10? Solvang was the one that was destroyed in the 10th episode.
I assumed that those were writer jokes, being like, people won't believe these are real places.
Oh,
because
really?
Who would believe the name Solvang is a real place?
Yeah, I guess so. But there's a couple others in the show, and I kept laughing every single time because
also it's a good on them describe that it's a whole class, because
Yeah.
I noticed this throughout the show.
That they're
It's
all
like,
the same.
There's a lot of ones that look the same, and I was
Yeah.
like, this is them just saving animation budget to destroy the same ship over and over. So they
Yeah,
don't have
no,
to, like,
they're called them California class ships, which is great. It's great.
that is great. I did not know that.
Well, to your point, the third episode is literally about how they don't get respected, because it's the one where Captain Freeman institutes the no break time, no, what do they call it?
They use it. They remove the buffer time,
Buffer
the slack time.
Yeah, like no more
everyone's
buffer
been
time
taking.
on the ship. She sets agendas for everybody. Meanwhile, they try to go do second contact with delivering trinkets to a planet, and people start to get tired and they mess up. So they bring the wrong trinket to that planet, and then the ship gets attacked while Ransom has to defeat somebody in hand-to-hand combat.
The people at the planet attack them because the trinket they bring is like offensive, because they're
It's wood and they like crystals or
and
something
they're on
like
the
that.
they mix it up because everyone is too
too-
like harried and can't
Yeah.
like spend any time to do anything correctly.
The best part of that is the Boimler effect,
Yes.
which becomes a thing through the rest of the show, which is Boimler gets a rule named after him accidentally that encourages crew members to take shortcuts, not blindly follow rules, or build in buffer time when they deem fit.
And it is the antithesis of what Boimler is
It's
and
literally
does.
the opposite, because the entire
So
episode,
good.
as everyone is freaking out about the time, he's always ahead of schedule.
And he loves it, and he's super happy, and is like, yes, this is great. Like,
Yeah. But he's also the one that saves the ship by telling the captain, you can't be on a schedule like everyone else. Like, that's not... Anyway. Oh, here's another one. USS Merced.
yeah, sure.
That's another Cali class ship.
I will say, I think by the end of this temporal episode,
Yeah.
I was on board. I was like, okay, I get this show.
Yes.
I see what it's doing. I like the characters enough now that I'm in for this, even though these are very silly.
Yeah.
I am going to keep watching this show and be happy.
I knew by the end of the Boimler effect episode that I was already smiling.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was into the show at that point. She was like, I like this. I'm like, okay. Even if it doesn't get any better than 3, which, spoiler alert, it does.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah.
This is a fine show that makes me smile while I watch it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's end up how I treated it. I was like, I'm tired. I don't want to do anything today. I get home, finish my work, and I was like, I don't really want to do anything. You know what? I can put on a Lower Deck and have a good chuckle and be good for the night.
Yeah. Side note, they have now started construction outside my house.
Wonderful.
which is great. So I just mentioned, the Merced takes part in episode 4, where they tow the generation ship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is another one that just kind of made me smile. It didn't really jump the shark or anything, I guess.
Yeah, this episode I felt was a little bit more Tendi heavy than
It was
some
very
of the other ones
Tendi heavy.
had been.
Yeah, because she messes up someone's spiritual ascension, which turns out to have been a lie.
Anyway, right?
He just wanted attention because no one gets attention on the ship, which is pretty funny. He's like, only 6 or 7 people get attention on a ship. The rest of us have to, float in the background. So I tried to make myself unique. But the ships actually accidentally get terraformed.
Yeah, because the generation ship is meant to have this special goop or whatever that the people would use to terraform the planet that they find and are heading to, right?
Yeah.
And the one of the things that they're doing towing this ship is securing that goop so it doesn't get out of control. Well, of course it does.
Right, yeah. They fix it through science-y stuff, much like they do in TNG.
Mm-hmm.
This episode really is more about telling you who the characters are. I think Tendi and Mariner than much of the plot, because you get Mariner demoted at the end of it when she keeps making fun of the Admiral saying censor.
Yes.
And Tendi has to watch the guy she's been bothering all episode go through a spontaneous and very painful ascension, apparently.
Yeah. They get to they work out their differences, right? Like, and he admits that it was fake anyway and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then he ends up sacrificing himself to save Tendi, which is the thing he needed in order to actually ascend. And it turns out it was like super painful and maybe not something he wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. And then we get to episode 5, and for me begins the upward swing of this show. I think of like,
I really liked 5.
5 is the beginning for me of just like, this is getting better. Like they found something, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So Boimler gets made fun of for a while that he has a fake girlfriend. They get to meet up with another ship. I think it's the Vancouver, maybe another. Anyway,
I think it's Vancouver.
So his girlfriend is on that ship. Mariner doesn't believe it, so they end up spending a ton of time together. Because
Mariner assumes that it's a the girlfriend is either a shape-shifting alien possessed by some kind of parasite,
right,
or like has a a space problem or something that is causing her to like Boimler, because how could someone pretty and intelligent and nice like Boimler, who is boring and dumb?
Right, exactly. It's so good. Which of course leads to Boimler becoming very insecure and acting ridiculous the entire episode, trying to make sure that Barb doesn't lose interest in him.
Right.
So he wears like wacky clothes, starts acting different, which upsets Barbara and like all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
They're trying to blow up a moon at the same time. Captain Freeman's trying to like stop a moon from destroying a planet or something like that.
There's a moon that's going to hit a planet, but the people on the moon are like, you can't do this. Like, this is our moon. You know, what are we going to do about like our people, and how are we going to relocate them and all this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And oh, hey, like implying that there's like a whole race of people on this moon or something.
Right. Yeah. We could just work it out. You know, we can figure this out. There's a way. Starfleet always finds a compromise. No, you'll wipe everyone out. Everyone will die. Other people live. And by the end of the episode, you find out that the moon has two people. It's
literally one
bunch
family.
of rich people on it. Right, like one family of rich people. So she just blows it up.
And she just blows it up. That's the compromise. Screw you, rich people. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah.
This whole episode is really good. And like, Mariner constantly like trying to, poke at Barb or whatever to try and figure out how she could possibly be interested in Boimler. And then by the end, Mariner and Barbara are friends.
Well,
they fight a bunch, and
They both think that they're trying to hurt Boimler, and everyone's wrong because they finally find the alien parasite that is causing one of them to fall in love with the other, and it's actually in Boimler, right?
Yeah, it's Boimler that has
it.
Right?
And so they think, Barb leaves Boimler because she goes, I'm just not that attracted to you anymore.
No, it was Barb who had the parasite.
No, it was attached to Boimler.
No, Boimler brought it, but she was the one who had the parasite in her, right?
No, Boimler had it. Because she scans Barb multiple times and never finds anything. And then you're right. When they're fighting, they accidentally scan Boimler, who's been knocked out the entire fight.
Right.
And they're like, wait a minute.
He has
he had it the whole time. And then
it was influencing her.
Right. She leaves Boimler because she's like, like that was making me more attracted to you than I actually am. I still like you though, but whatever. And then Barb and Mariner become really good friends.
Yeah.
You also get this funny side story with the Vancouver, where the Vancouver is one of those A team ships, not a B team ship. And the lieutenant commander from that ship is trying to transfer over Tendi or Rutherford in order to be able to transfer to the Cerritos, where he doesn't have to do as much work.
Mm-hmm.
which is a pretty good story too. That whole
Is this? Oh, go ahead.
I was just say that whole side story even is so good.
I really is this the part where Rutherford and Tendi are both competing on the other ship to try and get the like fancy scanner to keep?
Yes.
So good. They're both like the T-88. Like,
It's got the
I could
purple
do
stripe.
the purple stripe. I could do 100 tasks with this. It's so cool. And then they're like, and then the twist at the end being that like, whichever one of you like, gets to keep it. But what he actually meant is you get promoted to this ship.
Yeah.
And that's how you get to keep it.
And this is kind of where you find out the
no.
Cerritos is old and kind of falling apart.
Right.
Which is funny.
Yeah.
The next episode, they have to go, salvage a ship, I think is what it is.
Yeah. There's an old Starfleet ship, and they're here to salvage it.
It's really not as much of a point in the show, I don't think.
This episode is really about the holodeck.
Yeah, because they just argue the whole time, and then the holodeck ends up influencing the rest of the show. So, how do you like Badgie?
What a silly idea.
Not to be left out from all the other shows' holodeck shenanigans, they create their own villain on the holodeck in Badgie, who Rutherford has created as a holographic assistant, played by what's his name? Jack McBrayer.
Yep.
Yep. Who makes all the silly voices on a lot of different stuff.
Hi, I'm Badgie.
Hi, I'm Badgie. I'm gonna kill you.
You have to turn the safeties off.
Yeah, so they try and use Badgie to help them do training, right?
Yeah.
They're doing like training or whatever with Badgie, different exercises, and then the shields go down on the ship, and the holodeck malfunctions when they get attacked, which causes safety protocols to go offline, and Badgie becomes a homicidal murdering maniac.
Yeah, he really wants to. He really wants to kill his father, Rutherford, who created him. In classic literary style, right?
Right, of course.
And he's just like a murderous, sentient badge with arms and legs.
Right. The ship thing, the other ship thing goes out of control. I don't remember why, but takes out the enemy ship. They beat up Badgie by freezing him.
Yeah, don't they go to? They change the program to like a frozen mountaintop, and without the safeties, Badgie's like freezes
because he has no blood or something.
Right, and he's metal, Yeah. And so he straight up just like turns into an icicle, and they leave him there.
And is this the one where the guy Fletch, is it their friend, right? Fletch creates some sort of brain core with isolinear chips or something.
Yes.
And it goes crazy and starts picking up stuff around the ship, and then they shoot it at the Drakmani ship.
And that's the thing that is like, they're fighting on the ship and causes the ship to go crazy.
Yeah.
Which is why the holodeck malfunctions.
And I remember this. I remember this being the first episode where we hear USS Titan.
It is
because that's where Fletcher gets transferred and then fired.
Yeah, he gets transferred because of his great job saving the ship and all this stuff.
Turns out
he gets
no,
and then he's there, and it turns out that it's terrible, and he gets discharged.
Yeah. My second favorite episode, maybe my third favorite, is number 7.
Next one. Yes, this was a very good one.
Which creates a new, as far as I understand it, or maybe I just didn't look it up. Section 14. Is Section 14 new?
I don't know.
Star Trek.
Couldn't tell you.
Memory Alpha.
Oh God.
So Section 14 is, or Division 14 is what it's called, not Section 14. I'm pretty sure created by this show.
Yes,
which is
it is.
which is a specialized division for mysterious science and medical problems afflicting Starfleet personnel.
I mean, it's very clear what it's the joke section they made up to handle the fact that all these other shows create these horrible monsters and then never deal with it.
All these accidents that have happened in Star Trek basically are handled by these people. And it's like really good because they bring in so many references. This we keep forgetting to mention it.
We didn't even talk about it. Yeah. This entire show is literally chock full of references to weird stuff from obscure parts of Star Trek.
All over the place.
Aliens from the original series show up a bunch of times. There's a bunch of references to like one-off episodes of TNG and DS9 and like even weirder parts of Star Trek that like never show up in actual like screen.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell, and maybe it's easier to do in an animated show than it is in like a live action show,
right? Yeah,
because you don't have to find the right people and you don't have to do any of that stuff. But like the writers are just like, let's just do fan service every episode. Every episode is fan service now.
But it's not even that bad fan service stuff.
No,
it's literally
it's
asides.
Good. It's good fan service
because it's just asides. It's not the story. It's not like Star Wars style fan service where you have to wade through a story of fan service. It's just asides.
I don't mean to imply that it is bad. It is very, very good.
Yeah.
And it is done because the show itself is interesting and fun, even if you don't get any of these
you have to
references.
Get none of the references. But when you show up on the Division 14 ship in this episode, and you've got the guy that got turned into a fish or whatever because the transporter unevolved him. I can't remember what that's from, but I remember it happening.
Yep, that happened. There was I think it was a TNG episode.
Yeah, the guy gets unevolved back to like the original life on Earth state or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's just sitting there. And yeah, if you did it in a non-animated, you'd have to find a way to make that look good nowadays. And like, no, in animated, you just draw the thing, right? So in this one, Boimler gets phased by a new transporter upgrade.
Right.
Glowing
Rutherford
blue.
Is working. Yeah, and ringing the whole time.
he's making a high-pitched ringing sound.
Like that kind of like half of the sound that the transporter makes, he's making the whole time. Yeah.
And then Tendi
super annoying.
Oh, it's so annoying. He tries to go to the bridge and pretend nothing's wrong, and people are like, "What are you doing?
Stop that! Get out of here!"
Tendi also creates something called Dog.
Yeah,
which is this nightmarish freak of a bioengineered thing.
Tendi says that it's a normal dog, and she pets it, and it talks to her. It talks. Oh, that's weird. And then every time when Tendi turns her back, it like contorts into a nightmare creature.
It does. Yeah, its head opens up, its eyes float away. It can fly. It's like it's nightmare creature. So they send Dog and Boimler with Section 14 on the USS Osler to be taken to what they call the farm. And everyone's like, there's no farm. So this is where you meet all the other references from every episode of everybody that gets, you know.
It's a lot of like, this is the character from this horrible transporter accident. This is a character from something that happened in the original series where this person is half old man, half young man. And this is like, and the whole bunch of like space accidents and horrible maladies.
So they think there's no farm, so they try to mutiny. Boimler being Boimler betrays
them to the captain.
And because he's recovered, right? He no longer he's no longer phasing, so he's like, I don't want to take over this ship and get stuck with the freaks. The patients still try to blow him out of an airlock, but when the airlock opens, they're actually at the spa planet where there is a farm, And there are
And
even more references to Star Trek problems like Captain Pike's chair and stuff like that.
I was going to say there's a whole bunch of references in this episode to like really old or like not just old, but like famous Star Trek episodes where horrible accidents happen.
Right. Yeah. It's really good. It's really, really good. Dog flies away.
Yep.
And there's a whole subplot we haven't talked about where Mariner's friend shows up to take command of the Cerritos for a little bit. Mariner's friend from the academy, who's already a captain. So Mariner pretends to be incompetent the entire time, but then shows that she's a real like badass later in the show, where she fights off a spaceborne entity that has tried to take over another ship. But you finally get like the inside scoop on she pretends to be incompetent all the time because she doesn't want to get promoted and she doesn't want to get transferred or all that sort of stuff.
And her friend, when they were, they have a lot of stories about when they were in school and all this stuff, and how Mariner was like, going to be the best one and all these things.
Yeah,
and,
best in her class, that kind of thing.
And the captain is like, clearly Mariner is like,
the greatest.
The greatest. Yeah. Why wouldn't you want her?
That captain
here?
has the A team with her, the Vulcan and pretty funny.
Yeah, it was good. And then, at the end, Mariner, does the Mariner thing and shows that actually she's super competent, but she really just wants to be in the lower decks.
Yeah. All right. So there's a tie-in to the previous episode where they've stolen a bird of prey, I guess, or something. No. Yeah.
No.
Maybe? I don't remember.
Which
one's this one?
They don't explain it, man.
This is the one memory problem one where they're on trial or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This whole one is set up like
It's like the trial from Star Trek 5. 6. Star Trek 6.
Star Trek 6.
Right?
The one where Kirk and
it looks exactly
Bones
the same as the trial from Star Trek. Yes. And that's a reference, right? Like it's supposed to look like that.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah, they talk about it.
It looks exactly like that trial. The whole time. Yes. It's great. It's really good.
He demands he demands that they give testimony about the crew and so tell us what happened. And
Mariner, Boimler, Tendi, and Rutherford are all being questioned, right? They're just there being questioned while the captain and the rest of the upper decks people are suspended above them, quote unquote, on trial. So they tell a story about none of the people know what's going on except for Rutherford and Tendi. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. They Rutherford remembers he was assigned to this secret mission, but like was not able to talk about it or something.
Right. But they stole a Romulan bird of prey.
Yeah. And
then Tendi takes over and talks about how she was mistaken for being the cleaner by Ransom. So she gets brought on a covert mission on board the bird of prey where they steal a big box from Romulus. Which leads to them like this guy that's questioning them thinks
he's like, that couldn't be possible.
None of this is possible. You guys are making it sound like Starfleet's a joke and nobody knows what they're doing. We all know that Starfleet is great and that they all know what they're doing all the time. And Boimler's like, nah, man.
Actually, he starts talking about like the weird times where Q showed up on the wrong place or all this stuff.
Which is, he points out a bunch of stuff and they do the like cutaways with really funny animated versions of old stuff that has happened in other episodes.
Yep.
And then the guy that's questioning them acts really confused. And then you come to find out that he's actually having a party. He's not questioning anybody. Everyone's there just enjoying what they deem to be a party, I guess.
It's what this guy's party is, I guess.
Yeah.
This is something for his race. You talk into the horn and you spout your accomplishments and then write it on the wall or something. And then it turns out that his time is up and the party venue is being reused and they have to leave.
Yep. Q tries to show up which is a good reference,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't work out.
Nope.
Pretty good.
Get out of here, Q. We're leaving.
Pretty good reference for Q. Oh boy. And then we get to the last two, which are kind of like set apart, I think, from the rest of the antics of the series.
Yeah, these are the closest there is to like a
Real show.
connected episode thing.
Yeah. Boimler gets he creates like a simulation of the crew on the holodeck because he tries to perfect his interactions, especially with the captain, because he's going to do an interview.
Mm-hmm. He has like a review or like a
He's up for a promotion, I think.
performance. Yeah.
Freeman sends Mariner to therapy for messing around on a planet because she
she is like, I don't know what the
I can't remember why she gets like almost demoted and then sent to therapy, but there's a problem.
well, I think Freeman starts talking with her, right, and is like, "Hey, you constantly act out. You're never following my orders. You do all this stuff that's like
they're
against
on
the
a planet.
rules and
Oh
stuff."
no, it was they're on that planet with the computer thing, right? At the beginning of this, they're all worshiping the computer again on that planet from the original Star Trek, and she's back on the planet. No, that's the next episode. Sorry, that's the next one. So she does something. I can't remember what she does, but like she blows off orders and she's doing something wrong, and so she, like, okay.
I mean, that's she does that every time.
So Mariner was like, okay, fine, like demote me or send me away or whatever. She's like, no, I'm sending you to therapy, and she gets really mad. And
right, because the therapist like is an idiot.
The therapist only uses food references.
There's metaphors about food,
always,
and Mariner hates it.
Oh yeah. So she's like, I'm punishing you by keeping you here, basically, was her point. So she takes over Boimler's program and turns it into a movie, which is the rest of the episode.
Yes.
Which ends up being therapy for her in the end, right? But she plays Vindicta, who tries to take over the Cerritos.
Oh, well, hold on. Let's like set the stage a little bit.
Okay, sorry.
Boimler created a simulation of every person in the Cerritos by using all of their personal logs.
Their personal logs, that's the thing. Yeah.
A major violation of like privacy and all this stuff, right?
It's pretty good.
And so like everyone would act and like, be sort of who they are. Right. So that's their setup for saying like, hey, we can get all these characters to act the way they normally would in these situations, because Boimler programmed them all with their personal logs.
This is a really good episode because it takes a ridiculous premise and it actually gives you the most character-centric episode of the entire show, especially for Mariner, who obviously is one of the two main characters. It's Boimler and Mariner.
Right.
Boimler joins the captain and the holographic crew instead of joining Mariner on her pirate raiding ship.
Yeah, the idea was that Mariner is so mad at the captain,
she's gonna blow up the Cerritos and kill everyone.
Gonna play the villains, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's gonna join her as Vindicta, and they're gonna have an encounter and blow up the Cerritos, and everyone's gonna feel better because they got to kill everyone,
right?
Fake everyone. But Boimler's like, no, and he goes and joins the bridge crew of the holograms instead of his friends.
Exactly. It's so good. And so she has a fake Boimler who's an idiot.
Yeah, her like fake sidekick Boimler is like a complete moron.
Yeah. Rutherford and Tendi start off on Mariner's crew. Rutherford just loves the Cerritos so much that he switches sides mid-episode. And Tendi is a really good moment here where Mariner keeps making Tendi be like some violent Orion pirate. And she doesn't want to be, and she keeps telling her that she doesn't like that. Mariner doesn't listen because that's part of her behavior, right? And then eventually Tendi says, this is disturbing and like not cool, and she leaves the program. And we finally get Arch. I was so happy when they were like, Arch, and Arch shows up. I was like, yes, cool. Such a good reference also.
And at the end, I think you find out that actually that is Tendi's her like the what's the word,
The Orion stereotype
of her
fits
of her race.
Yeah, sure, but she doesn't want to be stereotyped, and that's a big
Yeah.
thing. Mariner basically blows up the Cerritos, almost killing fake Captain Freeman, but then has to fight the crew version of Mariner. And she basically goes to therapy at that point.
And she fighting herself, allows her to work out her issues, such as they are.
Yeah.
And ends up, sort of saving the ship, or saving the crew anyway. And Mariner goes, "Oh, this was great," and then is done. Boimler has stayed behind a little bit, though.
Oh, yeah. The two great moments here where he tries to find out stuff from Ransom, and Ransom says that he should bake the captain cookies, but she's allergic to, and then gets cut off.
Yeah, he passes out, so you don't hear what it was.
So good. And then he stays behind to try and interview with the captain, and finds out that Freeman is Mariner's mother, which had been a big secret this whole show. No one knew.
Right. And you're definitely like the captain, the hologram captain here in the holodeck is giving a speech of like, Mariner selflessly saved us from this evil Vindicta and like all this stuff. And no one ever would have known that she was my daughter. And then Boimler's like, what?
So then he flunks his interview because he's freaked out.
Yeah, he's panicked. And so then we goes to the actual interview. He's like, and then runs away. And she's like, he's terrible. He didn't do any preparation. Like,
okay. And so we get to episode 10, which is directly related.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they pulled out every stop on this one. Literally.
This episode, called No Small Parts, is amazing. I truly enjoyed watching it. Everything that happened is fun. I will
rewatch this episode for sure. This enters the Star Trek canon for me as a top tier episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, it's very good.
Boimler has decided he's going to be more like Mariner.
Yep.
Because, well, two reasons. One, he wants to be more world-wise, but the other is he's protected in his mind because he's friends with Mariner. So he can't be,
he can't
fired.
Get in trouble.
He can't get in
he's
trouble.
Friends with the captain's daughter.
He's friends with the captain's daughter. Exactly. So they're messing around on that planet that I was mentioning, with where they started worshiping the computer and sacrificing people again during the Red Hour, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he leaves his comm badge open because they're still on the planet and they're trying to get a hold of them, and he accidentally blurts out, "Well, I'm protected because you're the captain's daughter." And
everyone on the ship
hears
it. And Captain Freeman is super pissed.
Yeah. I don't know. Do we need to talk about the exocomp? It's not really that important, but it was funny.
It was funny.
Peanut hamper.
Yeah.
They could have, I guess they put it in there to make Tendi feel some sort of something. I don't know.
It's something for Tendi to do in the episode. She's kind of an aside character in this one.
Yeah.
The little like robot friend that she makes here, this exocomp, named Peanut Hamper,
who does everything better than her, right?
Right. It's like showing her up literally at every possible thing.
Right.
She's in the medical bay doing some stuff, and the head doctor is like, "Tendi, go stand over here. No one wants to talk to you. This exocomp is way better."
Well, it turns out by the end that the exocomp is a computer and has no interest in helping the crew other than showing off, right? So like that's the end of that.
And it doesn't want to be like when it could save the day, it chooses not to because it sounds dangerous. So,
right. Yeah. So the Solvang at the beginning of this is destroyed by a mysterious ship.
Right. And so they go to investigate.
And they find out that the Pakled, who haven't been mentioned in Star Trek in how long?
I don't know, dude.
I mean, one episode? One episode of Star Trek?
I knew they were a reference to something, and I didn't remember what. at the time, but yeah, I think it's there's one episode where
Maybe,
they're like scavenging parts from other starships and like
maybe
glomping
two.
them
I
onto
know they're in
theirs.
TNG, but maybe they're in a DS9 episode. I don't know.
No, I don't think so,
I
dude.
just
I think
remember
it's
them
just
being
that
a,
one episode.
a one episode of TNG.
Yeah.
Um. Anyway, they're scavengers. They're really kind of one of the jokes of Star Trek. They look ridiculous.
Yes, they do.
Even more ridiculous in real life than they do in the show, by the way. If you haven't seen a pack lead, go look up the picture of them from TNG. They look... It's silly to say this, but they look stupid.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like the butt of the joke. Well, it turns out if you're scavengers for 25, 30 years and no one's paying attention to you, you might have scavenged some good equipment. So this show decided to say the pack leads are ripping apart, battleships and stuff because they've gotten like really good gear they've scavenged.
And now have they have a what's the word? They have a vendetta against the Enterprise, right? Because they remember what happened at the end of that episode.
It's so good.
And every battleship that shows up, they're like, Enterprise. We have you now, Enterprise. We're like we're not the Enterprise. And they're like, yes, you are. You can't trick us. They
So
start
good.
shooting them.
Because they're still dumb. They're still like they're not
so
smart. So Cerritos shows up to try and find out what happened to the Solvang, which was destroyed when the captain tried to take it to warp.
Right.
So Freeman figures out that that's probably what happened to the Solvang, so they shut down the warp engine before it explodes, and she saves the day, but the warp engine gets ripped off, and they have to try and somehow fight off this crazy pack-led ship that is now tearing apart the Cerritos for parts.
Literally, there are lasers cutting parts of it off and arms ripping off chunks and stuff.
So Rutherford figures out they can use Badgie
to upload a virus,
to create and upload a virus to the other ship, because the other ship doesn't have any protection from viruses, because it will have to accept parts from so many different races that it'll have to be an open system.
An open system, yeah, exactly.
Which is
okay, sure.
Well, considering we spent all of Discovery being like, this is not how computers work. This is, however, somewhat how computers work.
Yeah, exactly. It would make sense that with all these conglomerations of technologies, you'd sort of have to be like...
You'd be running a more like a Unix operating...
Like, who even cares about that stuff?
Yeah.
It would be a lot of like hacked together stuff to make these things
there'd be tons
work
of
together.
Holes.
Yeah, there'd be tons of holes. That makes sense.
The only part of the story that matters, Peanut Hamper won't do the virus, so Shaxx... Rutherford sticks the virus in his head.
Right, and says, I can
download
and
it,
I can do it.
But we got to get there. So Shaxx slams a shuttle through the pack-led ship.
So good. This whole episode has like a lot of great Shaxx stuff, and you've seen him here and there throughout the other episodes.
We just don't talk
really
about him very much. Shaxx is a good character. Look, like we said, it's lower decks, right? So yeah,
right.
The captain figures a lot because they accidentally run into the captain a lot. But like Ransom,
Ransom shows up in every episode.
Ta'ana, the medical doctor, Shaxx,
right?
None of those guys have leading roles. They're great support characters. Like Ransom,
show up
Shaxx,
and are great,
and Ta'ana are in most of the episodes, but usually they're there to bounce something off of for the main characters.
Right.
There are episodes like Ransom's episode where he has to fight the hand-to-hand combat thing is a Ransom-centered episode where you kind of get who he is, and it kind of affects Mariner wanting to help the ship more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shaxx here saves the day. Badgie...
The scene where he just decides is like, all right, Rutherford, we're doing this.
He grabs him and
throws him into the shuttle.
Him into the broken shuttle they've been working on. This episode, like it says, no small parts. They take every little thing from the entire... So the shuttle they fly over there is the shuttle that these lower decks guys have been working on repairing the entire show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you see Rutherford and... Tendi, sometimes they're in that bay working on that shuttle, like, calibrating conduits and whatever.
It's really good at bringing the whole thing together. Really good. And so They get there. Badgie uploads the virus, but stops
No,
uploading it.
in order to create the virus, he has to disable Badgie's safety protocols,
Right.
right?
So Badgie then won't finish downloading the virus until the Pac-Leds kill Rutherford.
Yep. He's like, I'm gonna stop until they kill you, and then I'll blow up their ship.
So to make it work, Rutherford somebody engages the self-destruct to make it work.
No. Badgie uploads the virus and then turns on the Pac-Led self-destruct.
Okay, right, because they're not getting through Shax or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
And so Shax tears off Rutherford's implants in order to disconnect him from the computer.
Yeah. So then Badgie's like, I'm going to blow the ship up and kill you and me,
Right,
and do what you told me, right? Like all
right.
at the same time. And Shax saves Rutherford by tearing his cybernetic implants out and throwing him into the shuttle.
Throwing him into the shuttle and then shoving the shuttle out of the ship.
Literally kicking the shuttle out of the ship and sacrificing himself to, in the explosion.
And then, yeah, Shax unfortunately perishes in the explosion, which I didn't know if this is a direct reference to TNG. Ooh, but the first character really dying on the show being the security officer is kind of reminiscent of that.
It must have been on purpose.
Right.
Based on the way this episode and a lot of the other things in this show are so deeply rooted in very minutia of Star Trek.
Yeah.
They can't have done it this way, not on purpose.
Right.
Because they could have picked any character to have done this, right? It could have been, why not Ransom?
Right. Of course.
Why not, any of Tiana, any of the other ones, right? Why this guy? And you get a good callback here as Shax is saving Rutherford, because when Rutherford worked for the security team, right, he became one of the bears.
The bears.
That was their whole thing.
That's
and he's
so
like,
good.
Papa Bear will save you. And he throws him into the shuttle and kicks the shuttle out.
So good.
So good, man. So they have a
that episode where he
for
moves around
Shax.
departments is so good. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, I guess we didn't say.
So
the
more
USS Titan
Pac-Leds
shows up.
Well, so more Pac-Leds show up. The Cerritos has already sent out a distress call, and as the Pac-Leds show up and they have no idea what they're gonna do, the Titan arrives.
Yes.
And Will Riker is in command of the Titan at this point in the history of the show.
Apparently.
And they turns out that the California class might be a little bit underpowered compared to the Luna class.
Yeah, you think.
So the Luna class ship shows up and obliterates the Pac-Leds. Literally just blows them all up.
Just like poof.
Yeah. Riker is in charge of that ship. It's amazing watching him and Troy. And I guess they got the people.
Yeah, I was going to say Riker is the captain and Troy is right there next to him.
So they got Frakes and what's her name? I'm so sorry.
Sirtis, right?
Yeah, Sirtis.
I forget her. Marina
Sirtis, I think.
Yeah.
So they got them to do their characters on the bridge there for a minute or two, which is pretty great.
It was fun to see animated Riker do the Riker thing.
Do Riker stuff.
It was very silly.
It's so silly and so good at the same time. They hold a funeral for Shax. Rutherford has lost all his memory from the implant. And Freeman and Mariner decide they're going to work together. My guess is that Mariner gets promoted to security here at the next season.
I don't know. Yeah, it could be. Certainly could be.
She's good at it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
At the end of all of this, we see Freeman and the captain and her daughter finally make some peace, right? They shake hands and are like, while the ship is being rebuilt, they shake hands. And,
we didn't even talk about the episode with the, which one's the episode where they're at space dock?
Isn't it this part right here?
Is it this one where they have the like 10-minute going around the ship scene? No, it's another episode. I can't remember which one it is. It's not here, I don't think, because the ship is still under construction. But at one point in the show, there's you know how when the Enterprise gets rebuilt into the Enterprise A,
Right.
that movie where they show up and they're watching, they come out from underneath another ship and the music swells and they fly around the Enterprise A and you get all these beauty shots of it. They redid that in one of these episodes for the Cerritos, and I can't remember which one it was because people should watch that too. I can't remember.
Is it not here?
It's
not
here.
10 minutes long because
No, it's not.
It's a quick series of shots. Yeah.
But it's the joke is that it's much longer than it was in the movie. I'll have to find it
Yeah. I don't remember where it is. I remember the scene you're talking about.
because they play the music and it just keeps going and going and going.
Yes, it does. It's very good.
And the last scene of this one is Boimler on the Titan.
So again,
There's
at
a
the
really
start
good.
of
We
this,
missed
right?
the scene with after Shax's funeral. Riker is on board the Cerritos and in the bar hanging out.
Yeah, and he and Mariner are getting along.
Yeah.
And
And
at some point he comes over and is like, Boimler, how would you like to be?
he's like,
know.
I heard you're
You're
what is
friends
that?
with Mariner. And
Well,
like
he's like, I heard you're like a grade A guy, and he hands him a pad. And then you find out that he's been promoted to the Titan.
yes. And so the end of the season, you see Boimler
Ignoring
on the Titan.
Mariner.
Yeah, ignoring Mariner's calls.
Constant
and,
calls, it appears.
yes, and is being he's acting more like Mariner on the Titan, right? You can tell because like he has friends on the Titan who are like, oh wow, that's so cool that you did all these things. Like,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, that's what Boimler does, which is not what Boimler does.
No. Nope. Oh man! And then the show ends on my favorite line that you hated. He tells Boimler to take it to warp a 5, 6, 7, 8.
So dumb. So dumb.
Yeah. Well, Troy agrees with you. She goes, not with the jazz again.
I know. It really is.
Oh, so good though.
It was a great callback to Riker's stuff. I just hate it.
I loved this episode. I loved it.
It was really, really good. Really good. Easily the best one of this show. And there are several good ones. Again, I think the back half kind of is better than the front half.
Absolutely. But you need the front half.
Yeah, totally. I'm not saying people should watch. If you like Star Trek, you can watch all of this and be perfectly happy. I think that anyone could watch some of these last ones and enjoy them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of them they're a little bit more dependent on the early, especially this last one where it takes a lot of the parts from the earlier parts of the show, and but they're all callbacks in a very light way, right? Like it doesn't matter what shuttle they took if you don't care.
Right.
But it's cool to see that it was the shuttle they were working on the whole show.
Yep.
You know?
It is. There are so many callbacks in this episode to random things that happen throughout both Star Trek history and this show. It's honestly impressive.
What do you think of the characters by the end?
Yeah.
Because we've only lost Shax, so you'll see the rest of them again. Any thoughts on... I mean... It's not called the USS Cerritos, so we might see the Titan for a while.
Well, so or does what happened to Fletcher or whatever happen to Boimler, and he gets demoted back to the Cerritos, or
he's a competent
or
officer, right? So unlikely he gets demoted by incompetence.
Wow, but he's trying to act more like Mariner now, so that would
maybe he gets demoted because he does a Mariner thing.
Yeah, he does a Mariner thing, and Riker's like, I'm not putting up with this shit. Get out of here. And then he's immediately sent back to the Cerritos.
Yeah. We never talked about
who knows?
We never talked about it. What do you think of we've graded the opening for all Star Trek shows, really. What
Mm.
do you think of the opening to this show where the meteor hits the ship and they almost fall in the black hole and
I
the thing is sucking
um
on the nacelle?
I won't lie to you. I skipped the opening nearly every time.
I did too.
So it's fine. Like it fits the themes of this show
It
in
was
that.
funny the first time and the
Yeah,
second time and amusing the third time, and then by then I started skipping it.
it's like a lot of semi madcap comedy, which is sort of the theme of this show anyway. So
Yeah, it just doesn't
I
have
was
the
in for it.
same. It doesn't have the same like music cues. It doesn't have the same visual cues. It's a lot shorter, and
Yeah,
so it just feels
yeah,
much
way
more of a
shorter.
space saver than.
Well, it is a shorter show. It is a the like
Absolutely, yeah.
the stirring orchestral soundtracks of some of these other ones don't make any sense in this show because it's not that kind of a show. Like there's
Right,
no reason to like have a like triumphant orchestral score when
right, sure.
nothing that's going on here is a triumph. Um but yeah, it's fine. I think it's a good it is good for what this show is. The first time I saw it though, I will say I had the like distinct worry that they are Rick and Mortying this show
Mm-hmm.
because it feels a lot like the Rick and Morty opening,
Sure,
also because of the animation, but because the hijinks are so ridiculous in
they
it.
are pretty high level hijinks. Um,
But it turns out the show is also doing those hijinks, and it can still somehow make them into Star Trek things. So I was okay with it.
yeah, I think I agree. I'm surprised that it's that short, but I think there's new episodes already in the works.
I think 10 episodes is about the length you get of a season these days, if anything.
Which is fine. I'm not worried
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully that means the seasons can come quickly instead of two, like a year and a half in between.
Yeah, I'm curious. I know they said they're doing another one, but I don't know if
They
they
had
have
already
said when.
CBS had already bought like 20 something episodes.
Okay, that was what I was trying to find. I was trying to see if there was someone said that like there were episodes that had been ordered.
Mm-hmm. I believe Metacritic doesn't think very highly of this show. That's interesting.
I think that if you weren't a Star Trek person and you watched it, you wouldn't like it nearly as much.
Which is weird, right? Because like that must be rated on the early episodes where they're kind of a lot slower and not the later ones and that's probably how most of that stuff works. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a great return to animation considering how bad the animated series was in the 70s.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little
Yeah.
bit more adult. I guess we got some news about another animated show because this one I wouldn't show to my kids, but it sounds like Kate Mulgrew is going to return for a show called Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah, I know nothing about
Literally
that
nothing,
show.
right? Like there's no
They're just
news
like,
other
yeah,
than that maybe it's on Nickelodeon.
Janeway's in it. It's on Nickelodeon. Janeway's in it. That's all we got.
Okay, Star Trek Prodigy. An upcoming animated show. Catherine Janeway will star. That's it. That's all that's on this page.
That's all we know.
That's it. That's it. It's gonna be CG animation. Okay. I don't know. There's like nothing on here about what this is about.
Mhm.
Anyway, we'll see. We will see. I will watch more of this, especially if it's gonna take off from the end of the series and not try to mimic the beginning of the series.
Yeah. It's a I am so curious to hear what they plan to do with the next season. So
Right.
I mean it certainly sounds like they already have a plan for it, and
Yes.
they've been working on it
They've
for a
been
while.
working on it already.
So that's good.
Yeah, I don't know how many episodes or anything. They don't list it anywhere that I've seen, but I know they had thought about something in the area of 20 episodes ish. So
Yeah. So there is certainly some kind of arc here that they are attempting. I am in at this point. I will absolutely watch another season whenever they put it out. I'm guessing it'll be next year.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Well, great job, Lower Decks.
Yeah.
And if you guys remember what episode that scene that I'm talking about is in, email us.
Yeah, you can send those to podcast@wewergamers.com. Put Subspace Transmissions in the title so we'll know. But we will absolutely love to hear your thoughts about Lower Decks and other Star Trek stuff. I want to know what you people think about that Picard book. If you have read it also, send that in.
Yeah, if you have different thoughts about that Picard book, I would gladly hear them. I read it. I tried to keep an open mind the whole time. I actually enjoyed it. But there's issues of like, why isn't this the show? Why wasn't this the beginning of the show? And so, if you have different thoughts on it and you want to email us, do that.
Yeah, please.
Did you notice that Riker was in the movie Enterprise uniforms and the Cerritos was not?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think it's just showing you even more how behind the times the Cerritos is, right? Starfleet has new uniforms, and they're not even distributing them to the Cerritos. They have literal replicators, and everyone could get them instantly, but no.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So follow this show on YouTube and follow us on Instagram and Twitter and all the other places we are. This podcast is available on fine podcasting devices. And we would love to have you wherever it is you would love to have us.
All right, I found a list of all the names that they used for the Cali class.
Okay.
Cerritos.
Yep.
Merced.
Yep.
Solvang.
Mm-hmm.
Rubidoux.
I don't know where Rubidoux is. It must be in California. That's
unincorporated community in Riverside.
Okay.
And Alhambra.
My mother is from Alhambra.
There you go. That's all the names there's the 5 names of the Cali class right now.
Those are it's funny that those are the ones they've picked because all of those are definitely like B and C tier cities.
That you'd have to be from California to be like, I know that. I know where Merced is.
Yeah, no one goes to Merced. Like no one is like, I'm taking a vacation to Merced. Yeah. Solvang. Like that's not the places anyone picks.
Yeah, pretty good. It's funny because
drive through them on the way to other
would be
places.
Like Los Angeles. It's like nah. The next one will be like Vacaville or something.
Truckee.
Oh, that's a good one too. Is Truckee counts? Truckee's? That's on our side of the border, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. I've driven through it. What are some other
it's
like
really close
Fresno?
to Nevada.
Fresno's
even
too
known. This is too known.
Fresno's even too big. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be more like Temecula. USS Temecula.
Clovis.
USS Escondido.
I'm trying to think of more in Northern California because I know the Southern California ones because I live here.
Oh, you could get
I'm trying to think of like
the USS St. Helena or what's the
Healdsburg?
City? What's the city just outside of Sacramento? Folsom Prison. There you go.
That would be a good one.
USS Folsom.
There you go.
That would be that's the episode with the bad guys. Just like in Voyager, they have the bad guy ship of so the Folsom is the guys that have gone rogue.
The bad guy ship.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I love it.